This is Barry Zalma speaking for Claim School Incorporated's blog, Zalma on Insurance. Today we're talking about a Solomon-like decision made by a district court judge, finding no duty to defend, but a potential duty to indemnify under a liability policy, and why the concurrent cause doctrine does not apply when all known causes are excluded, specifically death by a drug overdose. In Southern Insurance Company of Virginia versus Justin D. Mitchell, the United States District Court for the Middle District of Tennessee on October 10, 2024, dealt with the request for declaratory judgment of Southern Insurance Company of Virginia regarding its duty to defend William Mitchell in a wrongful death case pending in California State Court. The key points of the case were a motion for judgment on the pleadings. The plaintiff moved for judgment on the pleadings, which was granted in part and denied in part. Then the duty to defend. The court found that the plaintiff had no duty to defend William Mitchell in the California case due to a specific exclusion in the insurance policy. And with regard to the duty to indemnify, the court could not determine at this stage whether the plaintiff had a duty to indemnify William Mitchell, as this depends on facts determined by a trier of fact. The standard for evaluating a Rule 12c motion for judgment on the pleadings is the same as that for a motion to dismiss under Rule 12b-6 for failure to state a claim. The defendants argued that the California case for which plaintiff seeks defense and indemnity asserts theories of liability that show cause of injury not entirely arising out of the controlled substances that killed the plaintiff in the California case, invoking the concurrent cause doctrine. The court, analyzing the California case allegations, found that all theories of liability in the California case anchored in the decedent's drug overdose, and no other act created a substantial part from a risk covered by the policy. Under Tennessee law, the duty to defend and the duty to indemnify are distinct. The duty to defend is a question of law that can be decided at the summary judgment stage. On the other hand, the duty to defend is triggered only after a fact finder determines the true facts, and these facts are within a policy's coverage. An insurer's duty to defend is separate and distinct from the insurer's obligation to pay claims under the policy. The duty to defend is broader than the duty to indemnify. An insurer may not properly refuse to defend an action against its insured unless it is plain from the face of the complaint that the allegations fail to state facts that bring the case within or potentially within the policy's coverage. The court can find no duty to defend if it is plain from the face of the complaint and the attachments thereto that the allegations fail to state facts that bring the case within and potentially within the policy's coverage. And the concurrent cause doctrine looks to whether coverage should apply when the independent causes, one addressed by an exclusion, the other not, cause the damages or injury, and will allow for coverage if the non-excluded act was a substantial causal factor. The claims against William Mitchell in the California case are all couched in terms of different liability theories: negligence, duty to warn, and violation of the California Drug Dealer Liability Act. But each theory of liability is anchored in the decedent's drug overdose. The court analyzed the specific exclusion in the insurance policy, which excluded coverage for bodily injury or property damage arising out of the use, sale, manufacture, delivery, transfer, or possession of controlled substances. And since it was those controlled substances provided by the defendant that killed the plaintiff in the California case, the exclusion applies. Plaintiff's motion for judgment on the pleadings was therefore granted in that it has no duty to defend William Mitchell against the claims in the California lawsuit. However, because the duty to indemnify is based on facts determined by the trier of fact and not merely the facts alleged in the complaint, as is the case of the duty to defend, the court could not conclude at whether plaintiff has a duty to indemnify William Mitchell relating to the California case, and therefore the motion for judgment on the pleadings was denied as to the issue of the duty to indemnify, even though there was no duty to defend, which is a broader duty than the duty to indemnify. In my opinion, the concurrent cause doctrine created by the courts of the state of California allow that if one cause of loss is excluded and another cause of loss is not excluded, the loss must be covered and defense provided to the insured. In this case, there were multiple causes claimed for the injury and death of the decedent, the California plaintiff, but all of those causes related to the excluded cause, the drug overdose. The U.S. District Court in Tennessee, therefore, provided a Solomon-like decision denying defense but leaving open the potential for indemnity, regardless of how thin and small that duty is. This video was adapted from my blog, Salma on Insurance, which is available free to anyone who clicks on the URL salma.com/blog. You can subscribe to the blog, and if you do, you'll receive notice of every blog posting, usually 5, sometimes 6 a week, and you'll gain access to the more than 5,100 blog postings. Please tell your friends and colleagues about these blogs so that they too can subscribe to the blog or to the videos. They're all free. And if you're interested in further detail about insurance, insurance claims, insurance law, and insurance fraud, please consider for a very small fee subscribing to my Substack publication. Thank you for your attention.